take a single heartbeat, just a split second of biological rhythm. Now imagine you could transplant that heartbeat into 1,000 different bodies over, say, 50 years.
That's a very vivid image.
In one body, it's powering a block party in the Bronx in 1973. In another, it's fueling a riot in London in the 90s. And then, it's driving a polished billion-stream pop hit in 2024.
It sounds like science fiction, but you're actually describing the history of modern music.
Exactly. And we aren't talking about biology today. We're talking about sound DNA.
I love that term.
This is the deep dive, and today we are looking at a fascinating breakdown from MMR called Sampling Origins Top 20 Most Sampled Sources. And it uses hard data from who sampled to track the genealogy of the rhythms we all listen to.
This is such a great topic because it gets us away from that lazy idea that sampling is just stealing.
Or copying.
Right. When you actually look at the data and the stories behind it, you realize it's much more about quoting or reconstructing a kind of musical archive.
It's borrowing the time of others to speak to a new era. I love that. Our mission today is to trace this timeline from, analog tape in the 70s all the way to the AI debates we're having right now.
It's a huge timeline.
It is. And to understand the complex stuff, we have to start at the foundation. The source identifies what I'm calling the holy trinity of drum breaks.
The three pillars. You literally cannot tell the story of hip-hop or electronic music or even pop without these three tracks. And the first one is... it's arguably the most pervasive 6 seconds in history.
Amen, brother. The Winston's 1969.
That's the one.
The Amen break. Most people have heard the name, but describe what's actually happening in those 6 seconds. Why did this drum solo become the foundation for entire genres like jungle and drum and bass?
It's all about velocity and texture. It's not just a steady beat. There's a crash, a snare, and then a hesitation.
Right.
Gregory Coleman, the drummer, he plays this 4-bar loop that feels frantic and totally controlled at the same time. And when producers in the UK got a hold of it in the 90s...
people like Aphex Twin or The Prodigy.
Exactly. They just sped it up. And that created this rush of adrenaline. It became the sound of anxiety and excitement all mixed together.
It's like the caffeine of the music world.
A perfect way to put it. But there's a really dark side to this, which the source text highlights. The sound DNA survived and thrived, but the organism itself didn't benefit.
Gregory Coleman died homeless.
Homeless and destitute. He never saw a dime in royalties. The soul of the groove that lives between his snare and his hi-hat generated billions, and he was just forgotten.
That is just... it's a tough pill to swallow.
It's the original sin of sampling culture, The sound is immortal, but the player was erased.
A ghost in the machine. You're literally dancing to a ghost. Okay, let's pivot to the second pillar. If the Amen break is that frantic energy, this next one, this is the pocket, the godfather.
James Brown, funky drummer, 1970.
The source calls this one the Holy Grail.
It is. It's the atomic nucleus of hip-hop. The drummer here is Clyde Stubblefield. Now, unlike the Amen break, which gets chopped into tiny bits, funky drummer is usually looped whole because the groove is already perfect.
Yeah.
It's loose, it's a little behind the beat, it just has this swagger.
And Stubblefield is another name that should be up there with, Ringo Starr or John Bonham.
Oh, absolutely. His left hand on that snare is the heartbeat of the golden age of hip-hop. Public Enemy, LL Cool J, even Prince, they all used it.
It never sounds dated.
Never. The source makes a great point here. Every time that snare hits, the era gets updated. It sounded fresh in 1980, fresh in 1990, and it still sounds fresh today. It's just timeless.
Okay, so then we have number 3. This is the one that takes us physically to the Bronx. The Incredible Bongo Band.
Apache, 1973.
This is the genesis point, as the source calls it.
Yes, because the other two are about sound, but Apache is about movement.
Because of the breakdancing connection, right?
Exactly. When Kool Herc was spinning records at those early block parties, he noticed the crowd would wait for the break, the part where the vocals drop out.
And the drums take over.
Right. And Apache has these huge driving bongo drums. So Herc would extend that break on 2 turntables, just looping it over and over to give the dancers, the b-boys, time to get down.
So without Apache, we arguably don't have the physical culture of hip-hop.
It's the breakbeat Bible. If you're a b-boy, this is your national anthem. Simple as that.
Okay, so those are the drums, the rhythm section. But sound DNA isn't just about beats. It's also about attitude. It's about a voice. And there is one vocal sample I swear I hear everywhere. It's that woo!
Yeah.
You can just hear it in your head, can't you?
Instantly.
That's Lynn Collins. Think about it, 1972.
And that's another James Brown production.
It is, but the energy is pure Lynn Collins. The analysis here is really interesting. They call it a chain reaction of voice. It's not just a sound effect. It carries this specific weight.
What do you mean?
Well, it combines this feminist strength with raw, propulsive funk. It's an energy injection.
Raw bass and DJ Easy Rock, it takes two. The most famous use, probably. The most iconic, for sure.
Yeah.
But then Snoop Dogg used it. Beyoncé. The list is endless. It's a call to action. It just cuts through the mix like a knife and tells you the party starts now.
But sometimes that attitude comes from a really weird place. I was looking at the list and saw Mountain, the rock band.
Yeah, that throws a lot of people. Long Red, recorded live in 1972.
What?
At Woodstock.
I think most people would be shocked. A heavy rock band providing a standard instrument for a hip-hop producer. It's that vocal ad-lib, right? You know what I mean?
That's the one. And the louder. Shout. It was just the singer trying to hype up a muddy festival crowd. But look at what Public Enemy and De La Soul did with it.
They turned it into an instrument?
They took that raw, live rock energy and made it into a hip-hop part. It really proves that sampling is totally genre-agnostic. A sampler only cares about texture and energy.
Speaking of vibe, let's talk about The Clash. Straight to Hell, 1982. This feels different. The others are about hype. This one, it drags. It's heavy.
It is heavy, and most listeners under 30 probably recognize it instantly as the backbone of MIA's Paper Planes.
Oh, absolutely. That beat is unmistakable.
But the connection goes way deeper than the melody, and this is where sampling gets really intellectual. The Clash were singing about the injustice faced by immigrants, about being cast out.
Right.
So when MIA sampled it for Paper Planes, which deals with visas and borders and stereotypes about immigrants...
She wasn't just stealing a cool beat.
No, she was sampling the gene of rebellion. She carried the meaning of the original song forward. The DNA of the track is built on that same struggle.
That's a powerful distinction. It's not just sonic, it's semantic. You're sampling the message.
Precisely. You're importing the history.
This leads us perfectly into what the source calls the architecture of hip-hop. These aren't just samples, they are the tracks that define the structure of the genre. And we have to talk about synthetic substitution.
By Melvin Bliss, 1973 again. You'll notice 1973 keeps coming up. What a year for rhythm.
The source calls it the skeleton of hip-hop. Wu-Tang, Naughty by Nature, J Dilla. They all built on this. But the insight here is technical. It mentions a golden ratio.
This is fascinating. It's about the swing. There's a specific, almost imperceptible pause between the snare and the kick drum. It's not mathematically perfect like a computer would make it. It's humanly perfect.
A computer is too perfect.
A computer grid is sterile. This drum break has a limp. It has character. It drags just enough to make your head nod automatically. You can't program that feeling easily. You have to sample it.
And speaking of character, Impeach the President by the Honey Drippers, also 73.
The title alone tells the story, doesn't it?
It does. It was about Nixon, but the source points out something ironic about how it's been used.
This is the aesthetics of resistance. The track was a protest song. But the drum break is so clean, so open, that has been used by everyone, from Biggie to J. Cole.
The irony being that the political moment passed.
Right, Nixon and Watergate are history. But the sound of resistance remained. It's a protest sign you can dance to. It subconsciously injects that rebellious spirit into tracks, even if the listeners have no idea who Nixon was.
Now here's a contrast I love. We go from political funk to smooth jazz. Bob James.
Bob James is the unlikely hero of hip-hop. In the jazz world, he's known for the super smooth sound. The theme from the show, Taxi, that was him.
No way.
Yep. But this one track from 1975, Take Me to the Mardi Gras, produced what the source calls a hard break.
It's those bells, right? That clatter.
Bells and the cowbells. It's so metallic and sharp, it became deified in 90s culture, especially with Run DMC. It just proves you can find the hardest beat in the softest place if you know how to listen.
It's all about recontextualization.
Exactly. Listening past the genre labels.
That brings us to a different emotional palette. We've had the hard beats, the political shouts, but what about mood? The source calls this section the shadows.
This is my favorite part of sampling history. This is where it gets cinematic. The prime example has to be As Long as I've Gotcha by the Charmels from 1967.
Wu-Tang Clan, CREM.
One of the greatest hip-hop songs ever made, period. And it's built entirely on this one sample. The source talks about RZA's sampling philosophy of shadows.
Break that down. What does he mean by shadows?
It's about contrast. RZA took these sweet, melancholic sounds, lush strings, sad vocals about lost love, and he laid them under the grittiest, harshest lyrics about poverty and street life.
So the sample is a counterpoint.
A perfect counterpoint. The music is beautiful and sad, while the reality being described is brutal. If the beat was just aggressive, the song would just be angry. But because the beat is sad, the song becomes tragic. It's a masterpiece of tension.
And staying with that theme of sadness, Tom Scott's Today.
1973 again.
Yeah.
This is the sample for Pete Rock and CL Smooth's They Reminisce Over You, TROY.
Such a classic.
This is Sampling as the Art of Mourning. The track was a tribute to a friend who passed away, Trouble T. Roy. And the sample itself, with that saxophone, it just carries this deep sense of memory. It feels like looking at an old photograph.
It triggers nostalgia instantly.
It does. It connects you to a past you might not have even lived through.
Then on the flip side of that emotion, you have the sexy and melancholic, the Isley Brothers.
It's Between the Sheets, or, as most of us know it, Biggie's Big Papa.
Instantly recognizable.
The source makes a great observation here. It says the track feels like it was written specifically to be sampled.
How so?
The texture is so luxurious, so ready-made for a rap verse to sit on top. It's the sound of 90s R&B before the 90s even happened.
We can't talk luxury without mentioning Barry White.
The symbol of love. The source highlights his 1973 track, I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More, Baby. It provides that luxury texture. Those sustained strings give hip-hop a sense of opulence. It sounds expensive.
It sounds like velvet.
It does. And you have to briefly mention the Soul Searchers' Ashley's Roach clip.
Right. That provided the warm aesthetic for groups like The Roots and Arrested Development. That organic live band feel, it signals to you, this is conscious hip-hop.
So we've covered drums, voices, structure, mood, but sound evolves, the DNA mutates. Let's talk about how we get from funk and disco to, well, to the future.
This is The Bridge. And the bridge is built by Chic. Good Times, 1979.
That bass line, Bernard Edwards.
The bass line heard around the world, it was used in Rapper's Delight, which basically introduced hip-hop to the mainstream.
The source calls this the bridge between disco and hip-hop, but it also mentions something called recursive funk.
Yeah, this is a cool concept. It's how the sound loops back on itself. Think about it. Chic influenced Sugar Hill Gang. Then, decades later, Daft Punk works with Nile Rodgers from Chic to make Get Lucky.
They're sampling their own history.
Exactly. The DNA became self-aware, the influencers became the influenced, and then became the influencers all over again.
Speaking of Daft Punk, we have to talk about Edwin Birdsong. Cola Bottle Baby, 1979 experimental funk. And if you listen to the original, you hear it immediately.
Harder, better, faster, stronger.
It's all there.
It's almost shocking how much of the Daft Punk song is just the Edwin Birdsong song.
It is, but it's recontextualized. The source explains this as the moment 70s experimental funk became the foundation for 21st century electropop. Same notes, but the technology around them changed the meaning. In the 70s, it was weird. In the 2000s, it was the future.
And finally, in this evolution section, Curtis Mayfield. Move on up.
Which became Kanye West's Touch the Sky.
It's just such a triumphant sound, isn't it?
It is. Curtis's falsetto is described as the eternal message of evolving black music, a symbol of hope. When Kanye used it, he wasn't just grabbing a beat. He was tapping into that generational optimism, placing himself in that lineage.
So we've looked at these specific tracks, but if we zoom out, the source gives us a timeline of this whole evolution.
It really is a story of machines. It starts in the 60s with the recording tech that allowed for clean, isolated drum breaks. Without that, you don't get the amen break.
Then 1973, the Big Bang, Kool Herc.
And the turntable becomes an instrument. That's a massive shift. Then you jump to 89. Public Enemy establishes multi-layer sampling, not just one loop, but stacking noise on top of noise to create a sonic wall.
Then 94, the Wu-Tang era, that noise sampling or shadow philosophy.
Moving into the 2000s, you get the digital revival with Daft Punk and Kanye. And now
the source points us to the 2020s, AI sampling and copyright.
This is the new frontier. We're moving from sampling analog records to generating sounds that mimic the DNA of the past, maybe without the original artist even being involved.
Which raises huge questions. If an AI generates a beat that sounds like Clyde Stubblefield, but Clyde never played it, does it have the same soul?
That is the question of our time. The source suggests sampling is borrowing the time of others. Can you borrow time from a machine? I don't know. The friction, the history, the tragedy of someone like Gregory Coleman, that human story is what gives the sample its weight.
Without the ghost, maybe the machine is just empty.
It might be.
So, looking back at this list, what's the big takeaway for you? The source has a pretty profound conclusion.
It circles back to the idea of humanity. Sampling is arguably the most human technology in music because it proves pop culture doesn't move in a straight line. It spirals. It evolves by looking back.
It resurrects the same sounds over and over.
Because it connects us. It connects a kid with a laptop today to a drummer in a basement in 1969.
Yeah.
So when you listen to the radio now, or your playlist, you're not just hearing a computer. You are hearing the breathing of nameless musicians. You're hearing the noise of the equipment from 50 years ago. It's all still alive inside today's hits.
That is such a cool way to think about it. It makes you listen differently. You start hunting for the ghosts in the machine.
The ghosts are always there, keeping the rhythm. And they always will be.
Well, next time you nod your head to a beat, take a second to wonder, whose heartbeat is that really? And where will it end up in another 50 years? That's all for this deep dive into the DNA of sound. Thanks for listening.
Keep listening closely.